What if the life you're living right now isn't even yours? What if every thought you think, every decision you make, and every goal you chase is being quietly shaped by something bigger than you, by society itself? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist and philosopher, believed most of us are trapped in an illusion, one carefully crafted by the collective forces of culture, expectations, and norms. It's an illusion so subtle and pervasive that we don't even notice it. It feels real. It feels like our life. But Jung would say it isn't. In this video, we're going to expose 5 signs that reveal you're stuck in society's illusion. But this isn't just about pointing fingers or telling you to wake up. We're going to break down why these illusions exist, how they keep you trapped, and what Jung believed you could do to escape. By the end, you'll have a new lens through which to see your life. And maybe, for the first time, you'll realize how much of what you think is you has been programmed by forces outside of your control. Let's start with the first sign you're living someone else's idea of success. Think about it. How much of what you're striving for, money, status, a certain kind of career, a certain lifestyle, actually comes from you? How much of it is something you truly want, and how much of it is something you've been told to want? Jung believed that society creates what he called a collective persona, a mask that everyone is expected to wear. This mask tells you what success looks like, what happiness looks like, what a good life looks like. But here's the problem: the mask isn't real. It's a projection of society's values, not your own. And when you chase these external definitions of success, you lose touch with your deeper self, what Jung called the self, the core of who you truly are.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's the trap: the collective persona is seductive. It rewards you with validation, admiration, and a sense of belonging. But these rewards come at a cost. You end up sacrificing your individuality for the sake of fitting in. You suppress your true desires, your true talents, your true values, because they don't align with what society expects. And the worst part? Even if you achieve society's version of success, it doesn't fulfill you. It feels hollow because it's not yours. Now let's dive into the second sign you're afraid of being different. Jung believed that one of the most powerful forces in human psychology is the fear of standing out. Society trains us to conform, to follow the rules, to stay within the lines. Why? Because conformity keeps the system running smoothly. It's easier to control people when they all think and act the same. But individuality, true individuality, is unpredictable. It's disruptive. It challenges the status quo. If you've ever felt the urge to do something different, something unconventional, risky, or authentic, but held back because you were afraid of what people might think, that's the illusion at work. Jung would call this the shadow. The part of yourself that you've repressed because it doesn't fit society's mold. The shadow contains your unrealized potential, your creativity, your raw, unfiltered self. But instead of embracing it, most of us bury it. We pretend it doesn't exist. Why? Because we fear rejection. We fear being judged. We fear being alone. But here's the irony: the more you suppress your shadow, the more it controls you. It doesn't go away, it just shows up in unhealthy ways. Maybe you feel restless, unfulfilled, or disconnected from yourself. Maybe you're envious of people who are living authentically. Maybe you find yourself numbing your discomfort with distractions, social media, work, entertainment, anything to avoid facing the parts of yourself that don't fit the collective persona. The third sign that you're trapped in society's illusion is this: you measure your worth by external standards. Jung believed that one of the biggest lies society tells us is that our value comes from what we do, what we achieve, or how others see us. Think about how often you've judged yourself based on your job title, your income, your appearance, or your social status. These aren't measures of your true worth, they're measures of how well you're playing society's game. But here's the thing: no matter how well you play the game, it's never enough. There's always someone more successful, more attractive, more accomplished. And so you're stuck in a constant cycle of striving, comparing, and falling short. Jung would argue that this cycle is a distraction. It keeps you focused on the surface of life, rather than the depths. It keeps you from asking the real questions: who am I? What do I truly want? What gives my life meaning? The fourth sign is one that's so common, we don't even question it. You confuse busyness with purpose. How often do we equate being busy with being important? Society glorifies hustle culture, productivity, and constant achievement. But Jung would argue that this obsession with busyness is another form of avoidance. It keeps you so preoccupied with external tasks that you never take the time to look inward. Jung believed that true purpose doesn't come from doing, it comes from being. It comes from connecting with your inner self, from understanding your unconscious mind, from integrating your shadow and discovering your unique path. But this kind of self-discovery requires stillness. It requires introspection. And in a world that values speed, efficiency, and results, stillness is seen as laziness. Introspection is seen as indulgence. So we avoid it. We keep ourselves busy, not because we're genuinely passionate about what we're doing, but because we're afraid of what we might find if we stop. Finally, the fifth sign that you're trapped in society's illusion is this: you fear failure more than you value growth. Society teaches us to avoid failure at all costs. Failure is seen as a sign of weakness, incompetence, or inadequacy. But Jung saw failure differently. He believed that failure is essential for growth, for individuation, for becoming who you truly are. Think about it: every time you fail, you're forced to confront your limitations, your fears, your shadow. You're forced to let go of false identities and adapt, evolve, and grow. But if you're trapped in society's illusion, you don't see failure as an opportunity. You see it as a threat. And so you play it safe. You stick to what's comfortable, predictable, and socially acceptable. But by avoiding failure, you also avoid growth. You avoid the messy, painful, beautiful process of becoming yourself. Jung believed that escaping society's illusion isn't about rejecting society altogether. It's about finding balance. It's about participating in the collective world without losing your individuality. It's about integrating the collective persona with your personal shadow so you can live authentically and contribute meaningfully. Here's the question: how much of your life is truly yours? How much of it is shaped by your own values, your own desires, your own vision? And how much of it is shaped by the expectations of others? Jung would challenge you to confront these questions, not to make you feel guilty or overwhelmed, but to help you see the truth. Because the truth is the only thing that can set you free. If everything you've been taught to value is part of a carefully constructed illusion, how do you break free? How do you step outside of the trap without falling into chaos? Carl Jung believed the answer lies in one of the most misunderstood and uncomfortable processes of human growth: confronting the shadow. The shadow isn't some abstract concept, it's real, and it's personal. It's the part of you that you've been taught to hide, deny, and reject because it doesn't fit into society's carefully curated ideal. But here's the hard truth Jung would want you to face: until you confront your shadow, you will never truly be free. Let's start by asking something uncomfortable. What parts of yourself have you been hiding? Maybe it's traits that you've labeled bad: anger, selfishness, laziness, greed. Or maybe it's things you've been told are unrealistic: your creativity, your unconventional ideas, your dreams that don't fit into society's definition of success. These parts of you don't disappear just because you ignore them. They live in the shadow, and the more you repress them, the more control they have over you. Jung believed that the shadow is like a locked room in your mind. You can avoid it, pretend it doesn't exist, but it's always there, shaping your thoughts and actions in ways you don't even realize. For example, let's say you've been taught that anger is unacceptable. You suppress it, bury it in the shadow. But it doesn't go away. Instead, it shows up in passive-aggressive behavior, in resentment that you can't explain, in sudden outbursts that seem to come out of nowhere. This is the shadow in action. It controls you precisely because you refuse to acknowledge it. But here's the twist: the shadow isn't just the bad parts of you. It's also the parts of you that have been buried by society's expectations. Your creativity, your passions, your individuality, all of these can end up in the shadow if they don't fit the collective persona. And this is why so many people feel disconnected from themselves. They've buried the very parts of themselves that make them unique, alive, and whole. So how do you confront the shadow? First, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. This isn't about beating yourself up or wallowing in guilt. It's about looking at the parts of yourself you've been avoiding and asking, why have I been hiding this? Who told me this part of me was wrong? Jung believed that self-awareness is the key to breaking free from society's illusion. When you start to see the forces that shaped you, the expectations, the rules, the judgments, you can begin to question them. But awareness is only the first step. The real work is integration. This means taking the parts of yourself that you've buried in the shadow and bringing them into the light. It means accepting them, understanding them, and finding a way to express them in a healthy, authentic way. For example, if you've buried your anger, integration doesn't mean lashing out at everyone around you. It means understanding where your anger comes from, what it's trying to tell you, and how you can use it constructively, maybe to set boundaries, to stand up for yourself, or to fight for something you care about. Here's the challenge: confronting the shadow is uncomfortable. It forces you to face truths about yourself that you might not want to see. But Jung believed that this discomfort is exactly what makes the process so powerful. When you confront your shadow, you're not just breaking free from society's illusion, you're becoming whole. You're reclaiming the parts of yourself that you've lost. Let's move to something even deeper: purpose. Jung believed that the biggest illusion society creates is the idea that purpose comes from outside of you. We're told that purpose is something you achieve: a career, a status, a role. But Jung saw purpose as something much more personal. He called it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Individuation isn't about achieving a goal or fitting into a role. It's about aligning your outer life with your inner truth. It's about living in a way that reflects your values, your passions, your unique self. And this is where society's illusion becomes so dangerous. It distracts you from individuation by making you chase things that don't matter: money, status, approval. It keeps you so focused on external success that you never take the time to look inward. But here's where it gets interesting. Jung didn't believe that individuation means rejecting society altogether. He saw society as a necessary structure, something that provides order and stability. The danger isn't society itself, it's losing yourself in it. It's letting the collective persona replace your individuality. Jung believed that true freedom comes from finding balance, participating in society without being consumed by it, contributing to the collective without losing your sense of self. This brings us to a critical question: how do you find your purpose when society's version of purpose is so loud? The first step is to listen to your inner voice. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly difficult in a world that constantly bombards you with messages about what you should be doing, achieving, or becoming. Jung believed that your unconscious mind, the part of you that holds your shadow, your dreams, your instincts, is constantly trying to communicate with you. But most of us are too busy, too distracted, or too afraid to listen. One way to connect with this inner voice is through what Jung called active imagination. This could mean journaling, meditating, or even just daydreaming, anything that lets your unconscious mind speak. The point isn't to analyze or judge what comes up. It's to listen, to see what your unconscious is trying to tell you about who you are and what you need. Another way to find your purpose is to pay attention to what resonates with you. This might be a book, a conversation, a piece of art, or even a random idea that sparks something inside you. Jung believed that these moments of resonance are clues, signals from your unconscious mind pointing you toward your path. But here's the catch: following these clues often means stepping outside of society's expectations. It means taking risks, making mistakes, and sometimes disappointing people. But Jung would argue that this is the only way to live authentically. Let's pause for a moment and ask something important. If you stripped away all of society's expectations, if there were no rules, no roles, no judgments, what would you choose to do with your life? This isn't a question about what's practical or realistic. It's a question about what's real for you. Jung believed that the courage to ask this question and to act on the answer is what separates people who are trapped in society's illusion from those who are truly free. But freedom isn't just about rejecting external expectations. It's about taking responsibility for your life. It's about realizing that no one else can give you purpose, meaning, or fulfillment. These things can only come from within. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means making choices that align with your values, even when they're inconvenient or unpopular. It means prioritizing your inner growth over external success. It means being willing to fail, to struggle, and to stand alone if that's what it takes to live authentically. This isn't an easy path. It's messy, uncertain, and often lonely. But Jung would argue that it's the only path that leads to true freedom. Because when you stop living for society's illusion, you start living for yourself. And that's where real meaning, real purpose, and real fulfillment come from.